Welcome. I'm so excited that you're with us today as we continue our journey of looking at mental health and practical ways that we can walk in freedom. We recognize that so many people are struggling with mental health during this season, and we want to be able to provide hope that you don't have to struggle or live in this, but rather there is a space where you can walk in freedom. Now, I don't know about you. I have been going through this season, and I've been noticing some patterns changing in my life. Almost would say, be daring to say addictions, right? Whether those addictions be my phone. It's been massive. I find that I check Facebook more now than I've ever checked. No one's doing anything, but I still have to make sure I'm on it, right? Or, there's lots of memes and funny jokes going around about, I've given up on homeschooling. I've decided to do trade schooling. I'm teaching my kids to be bartenders, right? There's so many of these different things happening that it's really easy for some addictions to creep in. And our hope here at Movement Church is that you don't have to live a life struggled in addiction, that there is a freedom that God has for you, and there is way more life than there is beyond addictions. And so we have an exciting opportunity here. We've got Laura Howe from the founder of Hope Made Strong, a local worker here in our community of Woodstock, and we're so honored to have you join us today. Today we want to talk about addictions and just what does that look like? What are some of the signs of an addiction that, hey, this has moved from something natural, it's just, one drink a night to more, or just looking at my phone, or how do I know it's moved from something that's natural and healthy or normal to an addiction?
Mm-hmm. One of the telltale signs is when it starts to interrupt your life or cause disturbance in your life. So if you're experiencing negative side effects, or it's impacting your relationship or your ability to work, those are kind of the telltale signs that it's shifting more to be more of a problem rather than something you do for leisure or for fun.
Okay, so it's moving from, I'm just looking at my phone to now all of a sudden I have to have my phone.
Absolutely. For me, my experience with addiction has been with my phone. I found that when I was just checking it for Facebook and just checking it, to scroll, and then I realized that I was starting to zone out, and my children were talking to me, or my husband was trying to have a conversation with me, and I would be completely oblivious, and I would be scrolling on my phone. So my use of my phone, or my addiction to the phone, became problematic when it started impacting my life and my relationships.
So what creates that? How does someone move from a natural scenario, I'm looking at my phone, it's needed, to now it's I'm here all the time?
For the most part, addiction serves a purpose. So addiction fills a need, and that need often is you're trying to avoid feeling negative. So you're trying to mask or minimize or distract yourself. So, having 3 beers after dinner calms you down because you want to forget about the day. Or going on your phone gives you, is distracting from the chaos that is around you. So addiction, you can be either avoiding feeling negative, or addiction can be that you're craving and going after the high or after the positive feeling. So that's really, addiction is 2 different ways. You're either avoiding negative circumstances, or you're chasing after a positive circumstance.
And really, a lot of times, most people I talk to are like, man, I never intended for my phone to have this much control of my life.
Absolutely.
Or
no one does.
Right? Exactly. No. It starts off like it's simple, it seems innocent. Yeah. It seems small, right? It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
It's just one drink. And then slowly you move somehow from just something that you're doing, maybe even enjoying or finding life in, to now it's become a coping mechanism.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
It's become a way to escape.
Yeah, definitely. And that's where I'm saying it meets a need. So you kind of have to figure out what that need is. And it's a strategy called harm reduction. So if you're meeting that need, and the addiction or the behavior or the substance is meeting that need, it's causing harm in your life, harm to your body, harm to your mind. And so try to divert or shift what you're doing so it reduces the harm. So for me with my phone addiction that I had is I actually added in more technology, which you would think is not the best idea, but for me it really worked. So I got a smartwatch or a phone. It wasn't an expensive one. It's just so I knew that I can set my phone down and I wouldn't miss any texts. So I added in that element and it met that need of worried about missing a text from the kid's school or a friend. And because I knew that would tell me, so it separated and brought distance between me and my phone. So another way of doing it is if there's a substance that you're addicted to, find out what it is, what need it solves, and then try to shift that and meet the need in a way that doesn't cause as much harm.
Yeah, because what I find with a lot of addictions is usually the addiction is actually not the problem. It's what you're trying to do with it or what that's masking. That's the struggle, right? So asking those harder questions, right? Why do I need to be on my phone so much? Why is it I find life in this and not in the face-to-face? Or why is it that I need to have these drinks? Or why is it I need to do this or look at this on the internet, right? Why is that the life than this?
Absolutely. And I use the term, I forget where it came from. I didn't come up with it. But dig where the ground is soft. If you can, those are really difficult questions. Those are really hard things to sort through. So if you come across and those are really challenging and you don't know how to work through that, just start with something. Start with small. Again, for me, it was leaving my phone on, getting a watch so I wouldn't have it all the time. And then it moved on to putting it on the counter and not having it in my room at night. And that was very hard to do, but I couldn't start there. Yeah. I still wanted it beside on my bedside for the alarm, because that's what I said I needed it for, was the alarm, not because I was playing Candy Crush at night or scrolling on social media. I just said I needed it for the alarm. So dig where the ground is soft. So start where it's easy, gain some confidence, gain some traction with that, and then move on to maybe the harder things.
So I preached a message a long time ago here at Movement Church, and I entitled it, Can You Teach My Alligators Manners? And the whole point of what it was saying was like, with the baby, I brought in an actual legit baby alligator, and I had this little tiny, it was so cute. This was a little tiny baby alligator. I could hold it in one or two hands, and we were playing, and we walked around and showed everyone in the church this little baby alligator. And it was completely manageable, it was completely controllable, and it actually was super cute. But then what I did is I had a guy bring a big, huge, massive, angry alligator. And it was scary as anything, this loud alligator. And here's the deal. And I said, the whole point of this baby alligator is to grow up into this 10-foot large alligator that desires to eat me. Yeah. Right? That's the entire intent. And I find that sometimes with addictions, whether it be the phone or whether it be more serious stuff, mindsets, whatever, they start off where it's hey, this is really manageable and it's actually really, really cute, right? Yeah. That's why it's an addiction. Yeah. Having that drink, being on the phone, escaping reality. These are really good things in the moment. It creates that release of the fear, release of the anxiety, but they become coping. And what I've learned those things grow to be a big alligator.
Absolutely.
That will destroy us and will control us. And actually what we thought was giving us life, or we thought was creating freedom or releasing stress, actually ends up creating way more of that in our lives. So I really want to be careful, because sometimes we can, like you were saying, oh, well, I'm not doing drugs and I'm not this. And those are, there's 3 addictions there are in life. It's porn, drugs, and alcohol. But there's a lot more out there that we're doing. How would you define an addiction?
Well, that's a really big question, Jeff.
That's good. And it's off the notes. So
yeah, it 100% is. Thanks a lot for that. So addiction would be a substance or a behavior that impedes you from living your best life.
Yeah. Walk me through then, it can be all kinds of things. It doesn't have to be just the big 3, although those are important. And I would even say in this season, especially alcohol and pornography are super accessible, right? Yeah. And they can look like they're a good idea at the beginning. They can even be helpful to some extent at the beginning, but they have one desire to kill and to steal and destroy us, and they can end up hurting. If I find myself flirting with that. What are some of those signs though that I need to be like, hey, this is moving. This is transitioning from a drink a night or whatever, being on my phone normally. This is moving to something I should be paying better attention to what I'm doing. What are some of those signs?
It's meeting a deeper need. So if you right, so pornography, if it's meeting a relational need that you're avoiding. So if you're doing it to avoid another need, that is a telltale sign that it's something. You're self-medicating. You're putting a Band-Aid on, or you're minimizing a deeper need. You think of, if you drink alone, that's a telltale sign. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, but I think if you're drinking because you've had a bad day, or you're drinking because you're stressed. So the need is to decrease stress, and the result is how you're drinking. And so I think that would be more, if someone's telling you, like if someone's threatening to take your credit card away because you're shopping online too much, it's impacting your life. If your kids tell you, if your kid, telltale sign for me is when my kids were so upset that they didn't have a phone because mommy has a phone. And I was like, they see value. They see that I value that, and therefore it's just something that they are required to have. So it's other people identifying, because sometimes we lose sight. We don't have the insight. We can't see. Our blinders are up, and we can only see with our perspective of how it's meeting our need and it's making us feel good. But other people can see how it's destructive.
Yeah.
So inviting that information, that feedback into our life is really important.
I think secretive too. If you're at a spot where you're hiding.
Shame, yeah.
Right, shame is so brutal, because shame destroys us on so many levels.
Yeah.
But I've always kind of been like, if I'm in a spot where I have to hide this, then there's I'm whatever, taking my phone and hiding it somewhere or whatever else. Then to me, I'm like, this is crossed. Maybe it's not addiction yet, but I'm definitely crossing into a line that if I don't figure out a stopgap, I can end up there.
Absolutely.
So for those people, I know that there's different levels of help.
Right.
Let's pause for a second and just kind of talk about, if I find that I'm in a spot where I'm flirting with a danger, it hasn't necessarily controlled my life, although every addict will tell you I'm flirting with a danger. What would you say are some practical ways? You've already talked about, keeping the phone out of reach, for say. Is there other things that we could do that could help us break a cycle in our life that's leading to destruction?
A key one is tracking how often you're using, how often you log on, or how often you spend, or how often you're gaming. Track the number of hours. So oftentimes that's what they say when you're dieting, right? Is write down all the food you eat, because most of the learning is observing or noticing how often or how much you're eating. Don't necessarily believe in that whole concept of dieting, but I think that's really valuable information for you to self-reflect on. So if one thing that is really helpful is like, on your phone, it tells you how many hours. Track that. Find out how much you're consuming, how often, and then harm reduce. So try to put the boundaries on your Wi-Fi, so you can only use 4 hours a day when you used to use 5, and slowly cut that back. You don't have to do everything at once. You're setting yourself up for failure. You're really just making it difficult for yourself. Addiction is meeting a need. So there's twofold. There's things that you can do to reduce harm, and then there's things that you can do to discover what that root core need is. And I think connecting with people and finding supports to go through the root causes is important, and then slowly reduce the harm on meeting the need.
I forget. I think it was in the 90s. There was a movie, I think it was called What About Bob? And it was about, and the whole thing was like, take baby steps. And it's a hilarious comedy, but it's probably totally inappropriate for today's culture. But I have always told myself, though, there is truth to that reality that, hey, today I want to be like, no one ever want to touch I'm going to take my phone, I'm going to break it, I'm never going to use it again. That may not be the best strategy to actually breaking that in your life. Sometimes it works, but a lot of times it's like you said, like, let's take this baby step here, and then let's move here. Now, I've found in my life, whenever I've tried to break some addictions, it seems to be that I go through, there's like those moments like, hey, like, there's clarity of thought, there's clarity that this isn't working, I need to change my life. I make a radical transition. I'm taking those baby steps and things seem to be going really, really good. And I take like 5 steps forward.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, something happens, whatever, and I drop back 2 steps. I have the tendency, and most of the thing, oh, you know what? It's why bother trying, right?
Yeah.
I'm always gonna be this way. But in all honesty, I took 5 steps, fell back 2. I'm still 3 steps ahead.
Yeah.
Right? But so many of us, because we have a failure after we're trying to get to recovery, we think that it's over. There's no point in keep going.
I think that's good to bring someone in alongside with you. Don't do the journey alone. Don't go through the process alone. There's groups out there. There are supporters out there that will walk through you and champion with you and be a cheerleader beside you as you go through and remind you, you're still 3 steps ahead. You're still going in the right direction. And I think that is really, really key for those moments. We all mess up. And that's where it's harm reduction. You're not trying to solve the whole problem. You're trying to reduce the harm on your relationships and on your body, but you're still moving forward. And if there's a setback, acknowledge it, learn from it, and then keep focused. It's hard to do that on your own. Almost like it's super hard to do that on your own. So bring people in beside you to do it.
Okay, so this is in the notes, but bring people in is so important. How do you combat shame? Because one of the biggest things that stops us from walking in victory and finding support groups is the shame, especially maybe not so much with the cell phone, but maybe with bigger things, gambling, shopping, chemicals, whatever. The shame becomes that big hindering point of I can't admit to anybody what I'm going through.
It is. It really, really is. Shame, man. Shame is the first thing that in the Garden of Eden, it was shame. It's at our core. It digs into, am I worthy? Am I lovable? Am I capable? These are the core values of who we are. And it makes us question ourselves. Absolutely. But connecting, finding those supports, testing the waters. There are groups that have sponsors and there's groups that have leaders that have been there and have done that. And I think finding those is really, really key. Or it's also helpful to go maybe outside of your family relationships and your friends' relationships and speaking to a professional. You can go into the walk-in clinics, you can talk to your family doctor, because those aren't dependent on you. They're not dependent on you for financial, emotional, or relational support. They're there to support you. So they're a good resource to go to because they're not expecting anything from you. They're there as supporters.
Do you have any local resources that we should be mentioning?
Yeah, so the walk-in clinics are throughout Oxford County in Tillsonburg, Ingersoll, and in Woodstock, and we'll have linked to that information.
Like just a regular medical walk-in clinic?
It's the mental health walk-in clinics that also provide addiction support. But we also have specific addiction walk-in clinics. In Woodstock, we have a really great team of organizations that are coming together to build in a strategy to support Oxford County. We, along the 401, and because of our population and where we're situated, there's often a lot of addictions that are coming through, or substances that are coming through, and people are struggling. So we have a really great strategy. So might be easiest to link to those below in the show notes, but there's definitely specific walk-in clinics for Woodstock, like the first Thursday of the month or the third Wednesday, and there's different access points.
Awesome. So here at Movement Church, we want to talk about all the practical and the amazing resources in the community that there are. But I do want to say, as a pastor, we believe in this reality that you were created by God on purpose with intentionality. And the Bible says in John 10 that God can give us life and life to the fullest. And when we're not walking in that, and addictions have the strongest ability to pull us out of living life from the fullest, we want you to let you know that that was never God's intention. In fact, I want to let you know that when we're looking and we're using things like shopping or any of these other addictions we've talked about, gambling, sex, pornography, drugs, alcohol, phones, whatever, we're using these as addictions as a coping mechanism. We are actually settling for second best. I want you to know that God's plan doesn't revolve around you needing those to survive, but rather God has taught that He has come and that we can walk in Him. And I want you to know that these things don't actually need to have a control of your life. You were created by God, and you're created for God to do great things. And God is alive and active. And so I want you to know that when these things are rising up inside you, personally, I believe the Bible. And I believe the Bible teaches that we can have victory. Actually, I believe that one of the statements is that Jesus died so that we can walk in freedom. And I want you to walk in freedom. And so there's multiple resources that we can have. One is don't live in shame. Shame does not have a right. Listen, all of us have battled some form of brokenness in our life. Whether they were big or small depends on how outsiders look into it. But in us, in the moment, it was big. And we've all battled brokenness. And we've all been able to we've seen that. So don't let shame win, telling you that you're not good enough. You're not this. We were never supposed to be good enough. Christ was always good enough for us. So don't let shame win. Find the right group of friends. I think that's so important. When we're talking about support, if we're not willing to go to support groups, then let's be very careful who we bring in for support. Find the friends that aren't going to pull you down and say, oh, don't worry about it. Find the friends that are actually care about you enough who will say, I want the best for you, and you're not living your best life. And in my opinion, cry out to God. Talk to him. He authentically is alive and moving and active, and he wants to move inside your life. And so cry out to him, and I promise you, you'll be amazed at how much that can make of a difference. And then we have a list of resources that are going to be listed in the show notes down below that we'd really love for you to engage with. There's phenomenal organizations in our community that are poised and ready to help and want you to walk in victory. And I do want to highlight, we have an amazing program that we have here called Celebrate Recovery. And that is to help people who are struggling with their hurts, hang-ups, and issues. Whether that's an addiction or whether it's just something that's holding us back, finding that root cause that we were talking about earlier. And we run that through Zoom right now. It's online virtual meetings where we can gather together with groups of people to talk about how and what are we facing and what are some steps to walk in recovery. We'd love for you to take some of those resources and use those resources, and we'd love to see you walk in victory and health. Laura, anything else that you wanted to share around addiction?
I think it's really important to know that nobody is immune to addiction, and we all have probably experienced addiction. So that shame piece is a lie. It's not accurate, and that we all are in this together. And I think that that is a key thing, is that we've all experienced this. And addiction isn't because you're a bad person or you're a weak person or you're a failure. You're really trying to cope with a hardship and a hurt and a struggle that is overwhelming. And then this substance or this behavior is the easiest go-to. So wrapping people around you and the supports around you so that you can maybe overcome that deep hurt or those deep issues is human, and you can do this. It's not about being a failure or being weak or sinning or anything like that. It's really about finding truth and joy and overcoming with Christ's help.
And he can, and he will.
Absolutely.
And there's freedom available.
Absolutely.
Like, I love that. I love, sometimes we call them testimonies inside church, stories, if you're not, people who have overcome brutal things. And what gives me hope in that is that if they can overcome that, I can too. Because why? Because the same God who helped them can help me as well.
Absolutely.
Right? And baby steps. Find the small steps. Celebrate the victories. I feel like that's so important to talk about too, right? Like, hey, celebrate those milestones. Celebrate those victories. Celebrate, hey, I would have responded this way, but today I didn't. And that's a win.
A moment by moment. Sometimes it is moment by moment, and that's okay. That's okay.
And we say here, moments can turn into movements inside our lives, right?
Absolutely.
So thank you so much for being with us, Laura. We are so honored to have Laura. She's the founder of Hope Made Strong, and we would love for you to engage with her and her organization if you need any help dealing with mental health.